Hello, I'm Jeff Stanley with Standley Handcrafted, and today I'm going to be doing a review on IGI6006, which is a paraffin soy blend wax. Now, I've been wanting to do a lot more wax reviews, and I end up doing a lot of other things, so I'm finally breaking down and doing this one. Even though I've been using IGI6006 for several years now, I'm surprised I haven't done a review on this one. So I'm gonna go through and talk about the pros, the cons, and kind of give my overall thoughts on this one and then kind of rate it at the end. Before I get into this one, I did do a wax review on, I believe, 4627. I think it was probably about 2 years ago now. And I came up with a rating system in that one, and I think I listed it like right here in the video. I'm not gonna do that rating system with this one just because I wasn't entirely happy. I think I even mentioned it in the video that I was going to change some of the categories that were in there, and I've got a list of them right here. So I had some things like ease of use, how easy is the wax to use, the cost of the wax, the fragrance load, how much it takes, pouring, if it's a single pour, double pour, if it gets sinkholes, the burn time, and how clean it burns, the cold throw, the hot throw, forgiveness in working with, and then of course like batch consistency, which is a new category that I kind of thought of adding in within the last week. And the only reason I'm going to get away from doing the different categories like that is it was really hard to come up with one that had a good rating at the end of it. See, when I went through and did the first one, I like all the categories. Those categories are all important when you're thinking about waxes, but giving some kind of a score to those and then coming up with it, the end results weren't coming up with what I thought the waxes should ultimately be. Basically what it was coming down to Soy 464 and 6006. I do like both of those waxes, but there is one wax I definitely prefer well above the other one. And for some reason, the scoring system that I came up with was putting them like almost too even, and I didn't think it should be like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and eliminate all the categories. I'm gonna go into pros and cons, talk about what I like, what I don't like, and then at the end, I'm just gonna give an overall score, and I think that's gonna work out much better. So, and if, hopefully I explain it well enough to justify the score that I give these waxes, and I'm gonna continue this on with any of the waxes going forward. All right, so jumping into this one, IGI6006 is a parasoy blend or a paraffin soy blend, and it's typically around 70% paraffin and 30% soy. It's a really nice wax. I like working with it quite a bit. It does have its downfalls, and I'm gonna go into those. But basically it comes in, if you buy it by the case, it comes in, I believe, 5 or 6 different slabs. I can't remember, I've got one sitting right here too. It comes in 5 or 6 different 10-pound slabs. I believe it's 6 because it's a 60-pound case. I'll have to look again, I forgot. 60 pounds. So it comes in 6 10-pound slabs, which is pretty easy to get through. It's I've shown in some of the videos before the wax. I'm gonna try to get like an overall headshot of it. It's a real nice looking wax. It's not a pure white, which isn't really a downfall. It's not really a con. I wouldn't put that against it. But if you're going for that real nice bright white look, there are some waxes that get a little bit brighter than this. This one has kind of an off-white color to it. But again, a very nice look. And again, it's a look that isn't gonna throw anybody off. It's not gonna have, it doesn't get frosting over the top or anything like that, so nobody's gonna question it. When it does smooth out, even if you get some uneven tops, you heat them up with the heat gun and it's gonna level off nice and smooth. It actually looks really clean. It's when the top is done, it looks a little bit shiny. It's nice and flat, a little bit shiny. All right, so jumping into this one, IGI6006, it has a 10% fragrance load. For mine personally, I add right around like probably 8 to 9%. The 10% does well, but I find that when you add a little bit less, it does just as well. That extra percent or the extra 2% doesn't really add much to it, and you can get a nice strong hot throw with a little bit less oil in this one. Now, definitely some of the pros of the 6006 is gonna be the hot throw. Once you get the proper wicks in a container, it actually has a really nice hot throw. I do a lot of these in the 8-ounce jelly jar and the 9-ounce straight jar, and I use the HTP wicks in these, which burns really well in the parasoy, and it has a real nice hot throw. Just a basic 8-ounce jelly jar will actually fill a pretty large size room. A candle that size in a single wick can sometimes have a little bit of difficulty, but since it's paraffin, it actually throws really well. So if you double and triple wick this wax, it will actually fill several rooms, so it's nice and strong. Since this one comes in the bricks, it's actually easy to work with. The big 10-pound slabs, it doesn't break apart. It's not as easy as like a Soy 464, which comes in the flake form. There's probably no easier wax to work with than the Soy 464. That flake form just can't be beat. This one comes in a harder 10-pound slab. You definitely have to get some kind of a tool or utensil to cut this stuff with. You can pick it up with your hands, but it's a little greasy. You'll definitely get it all over your hands. It's in a brick form. It doesn't really snap that well. It's kind of like a really hard Vaseline, or if you like almost froze Vaseline, so it's a little soft, but you can still kind of peel it apart. I use a big metal ice cream scoop and just kind of dig into it. But if you've got any kind of I forget what they call it, but the wire, you can cut down through it almost like a cheese grater, like the cheese grating wire. I forget what they call that, but that's a good thing to use. But since it is a little greasy, a little messy, I definitely have to give it, kind of knock it down just a little bit, because you will definitely be wiping your hands and washing your hands several times while you're getting this wax and putting it in like a big melter or the pouring pitcher. You're definitely gonna get a little bit of a mess on your hands. All right, when it comes down to shipping 6006, this is where it loses a little bit of points, or it loses a couple points. 6006 all through, and pretty much any waxes all through the fall and winter in the cooler months is perfectly fine. You will get some waxes that will shrink a little bit more. Paraffins tend to do that a little bit more, especially some of the harder paraffins. When the temperature cools, it drops down, the wax hardens up a little bit, and you'll lose some of the glass adhesion along the glass. And that's gonna happen with a lot of waxes. The 6006 is no stranger to that. Where the 6006 loses a little bit of points is shipping during the summer months. Since it is a lower melt point wax, it begins to melt right around like 135. Soy is around 125. There are some that are lower than that, and there's some that are higher than that. But if you're shipping 6006 in the really hot months, especially to places where it's gonna get 100 plus, you definitely have to pack and be aware of that. Because if you're shipping, especially like shipping in a plane or something like that, when it gets really hot, and of course in like a UPS, post office, FedEx truck, sitting in a truck at 100 plus degrees, 6006 can tend to melt during some of the summer months. So that's definitely something you want to be at least a little bit conscious of when you send those out. So the cost of the wax on this one, it's a 60-pound case for about $100. So the cost on this one is definitely up closer to the higher end on some of the waxes. There are definitely waxes that you can get a little bit cheaper than this one. So it definitely goes down a little bit when you're looking at the cost on this one. The burn time on this one is pretty good. It's not at the upper end, kind of like Soy 464 is. That's probably the longest burning. So this one has paraffin in it, and it's gonna be mostly paraffin, about 70%. So the burn times are a little bit quicker, but this one extends a little bit because it does have about 30% soy in it, which kind of extends that burning time. So you don't get the quick burn times that you would with like a straight paraffin, but you don't get the long times also. So you're kind of like right in the middle. So it's definitely a nice candle as far as burn times. Now the cold throw and the hot throw on this one are both very good. The cold throw in 6006, when you pour it the first day, you're not gonna smell anything, but once it hardens up, you put the lid on it and wait till the next day. And anytime after that second and third day, the cold throw on these is actually really nice. So if you have these at a market, people come up, they open up the lid, they smell it, it's gonna be nice and strong. And then of course, once they get home, the hot throw is the most important, and 6006 has an incredible hot throw. No matter what you do, what room you put this in, as long as you mix it properly, you're gonna get a really nice hot throw that kind of keeps people coming back for those candles. Now, as far as forgiveness and working with this wax, this is probably, I think, one of the most forgiving waxes. This is easily one of my most recommended waxes for people starting out. It's, you're gonna heat this wax up to 180, 185, somewhere in that range, and then you're gonna add your oils anywhere from 180 down to 170. You can add it a little bit lower than that, but it's not recommended. I would definitely keep it in the 180 to 170 range. And as long as you're mixing the right amount of oil, 9, 10%, or actually 8, 9, 10%, and you're mixing it in the 180 to 170 range, you're gonna get a pretty good candle out of this. It's really hard to mess this one up. Now, as far as batch consistency on this one, there really isn't a problem with 6006. I've been using this wax for probably 3 or 4 years now, and I've never had a bad batch come through, so the batch consistency on this one is definitely up at the higher end as far as any ratings go. Where this wax definitely takes a dip is in the pouring and the sinkholes. That's probably the biggest complaint I can give 6006. You are gonna have sinkholes. Or actually, let me rephrase that. If you're pouring in a tall, narrow container like the 8-ounce jelly jar or anything taller than that, you're gonna get sinkholes. It's almost unavoidable. And even if you pour at lower temperatures so the wax has had time to contract, and that's why you're gonna get sinkholes, is 6006 is paraffin. So when it cools, it starts to harden up and kind of shrink in, and that's where it kind of pulls down in the middle and you get the sinkholes. But again, these are easily fixed, but you will get them. So it's definitely something to keep in mind if you're gonna go towards this wax. Having a heat gun on hand for any candle maker is a must. I would tell anybody to do that, but you're definitely gonna need one with 6006. If you don't have a heat gun, you're gonna be using a second pour method on this one. So basically, if you heat the wax up 180, add your oils at 175, and pour at 170, you're gonna get sinkholes down through the middle. And then after that, you're gonna heat up a little bit more wax and pour it down through the middle if you don't have a heat gun. So that's definitely kind of a con. I would definitely rate it down just a little bit on this one, just because the sinkholes can be a little troublesome to work with, especially if you're pouring a lot of candles at one time. I've done anywhere from 80 to 100, and when you're doing 80 to 100 candles, you're already putting in a lot of work. And once you get down towards the end, you then have to go over all the candles with the heat gun. And it is quick, but when you're doing 100 candles at a time, it's just an extra step that really makes you question whether or not you like sinkholes or not. All right, so I'm going over my list on this one. So ease of use, it's pretty easy to use. I would rate it down just a little bit on that one, just because like I said, the consistency of like a harder Vaseline, it does get a little messy. You do need a kind of a specialized tool to cut it out and put it in there. The cost of the wax is a little high. The fragrance load on this one is actually pretty good, so it definitely bumps up there. The pouring and the sinkholes kind of takes a little bit of a hit right there. The burn time and the cleanliness of the burn is pretty good. It's not at the high end, but it is pretty good. The cold throw and the hot throw are both very good on this one, so it definitely stays up there. And then of course the forgiveness and working with this wax, I definitely put it up a little bit higher just because like I said, it is forgiving to work with, especially for beginners. And then of course the batch consistency is dang near 100% on this one. Like I said, I've never had a bad batch, and it works extremely well. And then probably the last thing on this one is the color. 6006, like most waxes, it actually takes color pretty well. Depending on what you're using and how much you add, you can actually get a pretty good color, or the color that you want out of this. So if you wanted like a deep red or like a really light blue, you can definitely achieve it with this one. So with this one, we're gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna rate it on a 5-point scale. So 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5. I think that's the easiest one to do. I was gonna do the grading system that we have here in America, but that doesn't play for everybody, the A, B, C, D, F. So we're just gonna put it on a 5-point system. So overall, I like the 6006 quite a bit. It's definitely my go-to wax, and I would definitely give it. So I hope that makes sense. I hope I justified the score that I gave it. I'm sure I missed something in there, so if something comes across, or if you can think of something that I didn't say with this one, please let me know in the comments down below, and I can address it in a future video, or of course answer in the comments. I try to go through and answer every single one of them. And then of course we'll be talking about this video and the consistency and the score on this one on the DIY Facebook group, which I've also included in the video description down below, as well as the social media platforms that I'm on, Instagram, Facebook, my website, the email address. So if you want to reach out to me, you can do it through any one of those. And again, I hope this was informative. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see a particular wax, let me know in the comments down below. I've got probably 4 or 5 here that I'm going to review very soon. But there are a lot of waxes out there that I haven't picked up yet. So if there's a wax you'd like to see, please let me know and I'll give it a shot. Thank you.